Hey, welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. Oh man, look at this tactical assault straw, banned in 5 states. I want to talk today about motorcycles, motorcycle clubs, motorcycle gangs, that kind of thing. Last week in Northwest Arkansas was one of the largest motorcycle rendezvous gatherings, whatever they're called. And my daughter and I went down and had a little look see, and then talked to some other people about it. I'm going to talk about that. But I guess, first of all, truth in advertising, even though I think I would look awesome on a fat boy. Where's my sunglasses? I don't have a motorcycle. Never owned a Harley. I did own a Yamaha 400 XS at one time, and I rode the heck out of that. But yeah, I don't have a Harley. Don't have any other motorcycle. So there's that truth in advertising. I have friends who have Harleys. Lots of guys in Special Forces buy Harleys. And so we've talked about them. Other motorcycles, not so much, but yeah, some. Um, have Shofarians with motorcycles. I had a 2 day, pretty in depth conversation with a guy who was prospecting one of the 1% motorcycle clubs. That was eye opening. And then, yeah, it's just things I think about. So that's kind of my background. Motorcycles. They can be very useful, right? They don't use a lot of gas. They can go many places cars, trucks cannot. Um, and I'm thinking, bumper to bumper, wall to wall traffic jam. You can get around them and past them on motorcycles. And in Asia, in fact, they do. The little scooters, little like 2-cylinder scooters. They have them everywhere. They have mufflers on them, but I don't know why, because they belch amazing amounts of smoke and they're really loud. So I don't know what good it is having a muffler. But a lot of people ride them in Asia because they're inexpensive and they go places. So it strikes me that if one wanted to get a motorcycle or four for one's, family, self, that kind of thing, the light is reflecting off the car right there, and I don't really like the shadow of the phone on my face. Looks like I have a birthmark or something. Maybe like that. No, I guess we'll do it like that. There we go. Um, they can be really good. Have you watched? If you haven't, you should. Long Way Round with Ewan McGregor and I don't want to get his friends' names wrong, but they basically drive these BMW touring bikes all around the world. It's an awesome show. I really enjoyed it. And I think it's the GSX, the BMW GSX, and they used to make them in a 650. Now they only make them in a 1200, and I'm not going to turn this into a technical talk, but the 1200 is a lot heavier and harder to do things with that you could do with the 650 horsepower. A Shofarian has, I think it's a Suzuki, like two-stroke, what do they call those, dual sport or oh man, what's the name of those things? They can go on the street and then go off road, enduro type motorcycles. He has one of those, and I keep trying to get him to paint it like camouflage because it's like white and blue and stuff like that. But he can go anywhere on that. Like he can drive that through the woods, and he has saddlebags for it and wears a backpack and stuff. And so, for a bug out to a location that already had your stuff, I think a bike might be a good idea. You certainly cannot carry a lot of stuff on a bike, even on the big touring bikes, the Goldwings, Honda Goldwings, or the BMW GSX 1200s or whatever they are, or some of the big Harleys. You cannot carry that much stuff on one. Sure, you can put a trailer on it, but at that point, you basically got kind of like a car-like thing. You might as well take a Jeep, right? My wife and I have toyed off and on with the idea, not the reality, the idea of getting a bikes, two bikes, getting like the spiders, the three-wheel deals, 2 wheels in the front, one in the back, and touring on it. But we're both too practical. It's like, man, first of all, our little car, our little Honda, here, want to see it? Right there. That thing cost us less. Cost half what a big Harley would cost. Right? We bought it used, and I'm talking a new Harley, but still. And we can carry a lot more stuff in it. And when it rains, or it's hot, or it's cold, we don't care. Right? And so if we're going to tour in a car. But these are thoughts I've had over the years. It might be good to have like an enduro type motorcycle that, bring in and just take off like Rambo. I saw Rambo at an impressionable age. Do any of y'all have bikes? What kind of bikes do you have? Have you done any bug out stuff on them? Have you done any camping stuff on them? Any long range, iron butt movement, 1,000 miles or something like that? Done any of that? If I were to be suddenly rich and lose half of my mind and decide to buy a motorcycle, I would buy two. I would get a Harley Davidson Fat Boy because I just think they're awesome looking. Other than that, it's a soft tail, and I sound like I know what I'm talking about. I don't. I just think they look cool. I like the big columns and the big light. And I would get a BMW GSX 1200 if I couldn't find a good 650, used. I just like those. The BMW guys and gals have their own thing, right? You can tell a BMW driver. They have their own culture. A lot of them wear BMW suits, like riding suits. They're kind of high-tech fabric, not leather. It's like all man-made stuff, but they look cool. And most of them wear full-faced helmets, and they're big on BMWs on putting like hard saddlebags on them and stuff like that. They're cool. I'd have one. Watch Long Way Round. You'll thank me. The first maybe 2 episodes might be a little boring, although for me I thought it was fascinating because they're doing logistics and pre-work for getting through all these countries, which I found cool, but you may not. But the actual riding through the country, all these countries, was pretty cool. So there's that. The other thing I think about motorcycles, I use them a lot as a potential bad guys, effective bad guys, because the average 1% motorcycle club, at whatever the local level's called, I'm not a biker, but they have I don't want to name any because I don't want to make them mad, but you have like a national 1%er motorcycle club, institution, organization, and then they have like chapters or something all over the place, right? That they have their own clubhouse and they get together and stuff. One of those I think is potentially very dangerous. They're organized, they're mobile as long as their bikes still work. They can go further with less gas than other people can. By and large, the 1%er groups do illegal things by today's laws. They engage in illegal activity, so they're not afraid of that. They're certainly not afraid of violence, and they're used to it. They're inculcated to violence, and so they could use it quickly, more quickly than normal citizens could or would. And I think, 50 to 100 guys on bikes with their support crew in the cages, um, they could take over a small town pretty quick. As those of you who are reading Fade to Black are starting, pre-operational surveillance has been done. Um, and so I use them as potential threats because they're very mobile, and they're like a band of Indians on horses, steel ponies, right? Now, having said that, the one guy that I talked to for 2 days that was prospecting, it's like pledging, like trying out for this 1% motorcycle club. It's a good guy. I liked him. I was at Daytona Bike Week once as a young college student who looked like a young college student, but we happened to be there during Bike Week when they have real bikers there. I'm not talking, the old guys my age that are doctors and lawyers, and for the 2 weeks before they go, they let their beard get a little long and scragglier, and they wear leathers and they show up on their, toys. No, like real bikers were there. And my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, we were there with a female friend of ours. We were there with several friends of ours, but this one female friend in particular um, was buxom, was blonde-haired, blue-eyed, was wearing a very tiny bikini most of the time, and like boots or high-top tennis shoes, and she had a mohawk like that. Do you think she attracted attention? Do you think I was worried that some of these real bikers, like they were hardcore dudes, right? And I wasn't. I was a college student. Do you think I was a little bit concerned that, I might have to defend our friend's honor or something and probably lose because, everybody knows about bikers? Do you know? And we had several interactions with bikers. Waiting in line at a McDonald's, waiting in line at another restaurant. You wait in a lot of lines during Daytona Bike Week because there's just so many people there. Surrounded by bikers. And do you think they noticed her? Oh, yeah, they noticed her. They weren't rude. Frat boys back in college were a lot more rude than these guys were. They'd be like, how you do? How you doing? Dun, 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 dun. Nothing. It's kind of like, and I was talking to the guy who was prospecting, and that's really those are my only two real interactions with real, 1%er bikers, if you will, which isn't much. I get it. But my understanding is, don't start no stuff, won't be no stuff. Don't be an idiot. Don't show disrespect, because they won't put up with that. They're kind of like cons in that way. You disrespect somebody, they have to do something about it. Basically, you be polite, they're polite. Go figure, they look scary. And so that's my experience. Some of y'all may have much different experience than me, but I am not worried one-on-one with bikers. And again, I could be wrong. Kevin Musak was just talking about the things the things you don't know, the things you don't know, and the things you don't know, you don't know. I'm sure there are things I don't know. But my general personal feeling is I don't have a whole lot to worry about today from any bikers. Not going to mess with them. I don't think they're going to mess with me. They don't really prey on the citizenry because they don't have to. But let this world turn topsy-turvy, and I think they're going to take what they want. So there's that. Stephen Smith, who I've been talking about a lot lately, but I really liked his book, and he's sending me 2 more, which I think is cool. I'll send him mine when I get his 2. But I'm not going to spoil it, but he has bikers in his book, hardcore bikers. And I really like what he did with it. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because I really liked it. I don't want to ruin it for you, and I think you should read his book. So, Revenant, I said what it was a couple videos ago. Stephen Smith, the Stonemont series, you can find it. and he'll probably comment on here. But I like what he did with them. So that's that. NWA Prepper, a friend of mine, just did a little side comment in one of his videos last week talking about the bike festival. It's called Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. And I think it's the third largest one. I think there's Sturgis, there's Daytona, and then there's this one. I'm pretty sure it's like the third largest. And he said something that I really thought he was exaggerating, so I went and I checked it, and of course he wasn't. He was telling, I didn't think he was lying. I thought he was just exaggerating, but he wasn't. He was straight up. And what I found out was in Northwest Arkansas, there's slightly less than 500,000 people living in what they call Northwest Arkansas. 470,000 or something. So that's, a quarter of the state, right? And for Blues, Bikes, and Barbecue, or whatever it's called, the motorcycle rally, 400,000 plus people come for that. They double the population for about a week in Northwest Arkansas. And the 400,000 plus people that live in Northwest Arkansas are spread out over this distance. When the bikes come in, they're all like right here at the bottom of the Bentonville, Rogers, Springdale, Fayetteville corridor, third fastest growing region in the country. They all kind of center there. Now, you can't get a hotel in the area that week. You can't get room in a campground that week because they're all checked out. So they do spread out a little bit, but their center of focus is right there in Fayetteville on a party bar street called Dixon Street. And so what NWA Prepper said, which made me think, and I haven't thought it through. So here. If something happened, catastrophic, the balloon goes up, the event happens during that event, when the population of this area has doubled, that's going to create problems on top of problems. We think in normal day-to-day terms, if the lights go out, people are going to go rob like grocery stores and hardware stores and drug stores and dun. Well, that's the people that live there. A certain percentage, I know my hands are dirty, a certain percentage of the people that live in an area are naturally criminal. And when the lights go out, another percentage of people join in with that, right? Because they don't fear getting caught as much. I'm not saying bikers are robbers or thieves or whatever. I'm just saying you've doubled the population. And so you've doubled the people who are going to go after the soon-to-be non-existent resources. Now, if it's the type of event where their motorcycles still work, they'll be out of here, right? They all want to get home. They want to go, for the most part, they want to get to where they came from. And so they'll be evacuating quickly. But if not, then they're stuck here. That's a lot more people. And the police surge during the rally. They go on double shifts and overtime and all that stuff during the rally, but you can't maintain that. And they borrow law enforcement from other areas, but you can't maintain that posture for a long time. So if all of a sudden your population doubles overnight and then there's an event, hospitals being overwhelmed, man, that's something to think about. And I have lived in this greater region for a while, and I have always known about Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. Didn't know the numbers, knew there were a lot of motorcycles around, didn't really think about the numbers, and I never took or even gave thought to taking any extra precautionary steps because there were going to be so many people in the AO. And again, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that, they're bikers and they're criminals and so you got to have your security upped while they're here. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about they're human beings. And in any portion of human beings, you have good actors, bad actors, and people who don't know. Something to think about. Something to think about. all those. So you could have a festival in your area. You could have something that happens on a regular basis that brings a lot more people into the area. That if something happens, you're going to have a lot more people to deal with. And if you remember, I think in any kind of huge crisis, your two major problems are starvation and people behaving badly. The less people behaving badly you have to worry about. The more people. So there's that. Motorcycles. I was a reconnaissance platoon leader in the Army. And, okay, quick little Army story. Man, I was like a brand new second lieutenant, which is the lowest rank for an officer. And honestly, second lieutenants don't really know a whole lot. I mean, I was airborne ranger qualified, and I'd been to school for 6 months, learning how to be an infantry officer, and that's it. That's what I knew, and but I knew that I didn't know anything. That went to my advantage, and so I'm coming into work about day 3 of my job of being a platoon leader, and as I'm walking in, the battalion scouts had rolled in that morning from an exercise they'd been on, all on their own, without any supervision, just their lieutenant, their sergeant first class, and the scouts. And they rolled in on 4 gun jeeps, looked like rat patrol. And they were filthy, and the jeeps were covered in mud, and they had camo nets on them, rucksacks hanging on the outside. The guys had bandanas around their neck, which in the infantry, that's like a total no-go. Everything's dressed right, dressed. These guys, they looked like what I would come to realize very similar to what Special Forces guys look like, because they just didn't care a whole lot about their uniform at that point. Shut up, dog. And he saw Sister Kate walk by. And they just had, you could tell they had a camaraderie, a tight-knit brotherhood in the scouts. And in my battalion, there were 3 companies led by captains, and each company had 3 platoons led by usually second, sometimes first lieutenants. I was one of those. So there's 9 platoons, right, in the battalion. And then there were specialty platoons. There was the mortar platoon, which had the battalion mortars. There was the scout platoon. And the scout platoon leader job was coveted by the lieutenants because it was a senior first lieutenant job. You had to have done other things. It was coveted by the hardcore infantry lieutenants. And by God, I saw those guys and I'm like, I want that job. And so I walked into my brand new, he wasn't brand new, he was old, company commander's office. I knocked on the door. He goes, "What's up, Fox?" And I said, "Hey, sir, I know it's way early, but when the time comes, I want the scout platoon." And he laughed at me and he said, "You better learn how to lead your own platoon first." But you know what? When the time came, I got the scout platoon. But the downside is we were light infantry by that point. We didn't have those cool gun jeeps. I got issued size large rucksacks. And so we walked everywhere for the most part. And we had some cool toys, but not many. And then right before I left the scout platoon, because, I did that job for about a year, and I'm getting ready to go to a different job, the battalions were getting issued off-road motorcycles for the scout platoon. Ooh. And it was a new doctrinal thing in the Army. And there was a new manual, and the theory was, I think they were going to issue 3 or 4 per scout platoon. And they were Husqvarnas, I remember that. And they ended up choosing them because you could lay it down on its side and it wouldn't leak, as opposed to the ones that it was competing with. And, the thought was the guys could ride up ahead and scout, and they had radio mounts and rifle mounts. They were really cool looking. And I was like, man, I'm leaving this platoon at the wrong time because they sent them to motorcycle school, off-road school. But you know how those motorcycles ended up being used? Because I watched them from afar from my next job. The battalion commander took them from the scout platoon. They didn't belong to the scout platoon. He said, "Nope, you can't have these." And he gave them to his staff to run around and do staff coordination in the field. So the scouts never got them. Anyway, so There you go, motorcycles. What are y'all's thoughts on motorcycles? What do you think? I think they have a definite place in preparedness. I think they're a potential threat, and I think they're worth considering. All right, bikes. Blum 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 blum. Blitty blatty blitty blatty. I'll see you out there.